fifth installment of Diversity Matters, where I get the opportunity to discuss the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leaders across the country. My name is Teresa Palacios Smith, and I'm the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And I'm so excited about this series, which actually takes a deep dive into some of the important work that leaders are making to drive meaningful change within the real estate industry, as well as diversity matters. And today I'm thrilled to talk and have a conversation with Ryan Weyandt, who's a true champion and source of inspiration to so many of us in the real estate industry. For those who don't know Ryan, he is the founder and CEO of the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance. His background and experience in organizational change, and we're going to talk a little bit about that background in a few minutes, it really has propelled the Alliance in just a few short years to be known as one of the most esteemed voices dedicated to empowering the LGBTQ real estate community on their journey to homeownership. Prior to his work with the Alliance, Ryan spent a decade in the mortgage industry, working in various roles with both Wells Fargo and U.S. Bank, which I know Ryan has had to be a huge asset with your work with the Alliance, and also through your collaborative approach. And I realize you got background in this as well. You've really been able to influence the industry and forge impactful partnerships with key players, fostering a more inclusive environment. And this year, you spearheaded the Stop Hating Real Estate movement, joining forces with the Asian Real Estate Association of America, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and WomanUp. And together, I love that you stand against hate, championing compassion and kindness. And Ryan, I am so honored to have you on the show. And I have to say that you're one of those people that the minute I met you, I felt such a deep connection with you and view you more as more than just a colleague. I view you as a friend. And so I'm so excited to have you here and look forward to having deeper conversations about the work that you're doing at the Alliance.
It's an honor to be here. First of all, nice to see you again, my friend. I consider you to be a friend and something of a mentor to me. So to be on this end of this call is an absolute pleasure and a joy. You and I have been fortunate to spend a lot of time together in person as well, not just virtually since the Alliance launched. And Teresa, I got to tell you, you really paved the way for so many of us on so many fronts with the work you do for Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway and really the whole industry, pursuing your passion in DEI work. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be one of your guests. There's quite an esteemed list of folks that have appeared on this before me, and it's truly an honor to follow in their footsteps.
Oh, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. One of the things I always like to know is, honestly, because you were such a leader in the mortgage industry and your background as well, how did you find your way into the nonprofit world? Because it is such a different, part of what we do. I was a volunteer as a chair of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce when I was president and served on their board. So I know it's a very different background. And so how did you decide that this is something you wanted to pursue?
I feel like we all kind of stumble into where we end up now more than ever. I often get asked the question, how did you end up in the mortgage industry with a degree in psychology and a degree in business management? What happened there? Well, you stumble into it, right? You know someone and they tell you how great it is. And you get into it and realize, hey, sales is a good thing. I know people, I like what I'm doing. And then the money just starts coming. Well, at Wells Fargo in 2012, I had the opportunity to realize what this whole DEI thing was all about. And it's really, in my opinion, at least, diversity, equity, and inclusion, Teresa, is no more and no less than accepting people where they are, how they are, and what they bring to the table. And it really is an art of loving people. I realized that I had a passion for that at Wells Fargo, and I got very active on a volunteer scale with some of their employee resource groups, both leading and participating. And then really on a company level, doing things in San Francisco at the bank headquarters and in Des Moines at the mortgage headquarters. And in 2012, I was privileged to be able to go down to Wells Fargo Home Mortgage in Des Moines, Iowa, and I got to see a presentation by a man named Jerry Asensio on stage. And after that, I met another man by the name of Gary Acosta and a friend and a fabulous leader by the name of Marissa Calderon. And I got to spend about 45 minutes with those three after Jerry's one-man show, which was very moving, by the way. That was the first time as a, well, now I guess middle-aged, 38, as a white guy in the Midwest. I really had never seen the Latino experience before the way that Jerry put it on. And it registered. And I remember I left that presentation so emotional and not just sad or empathetic, but also inspired and excited. And I had a discussion with Gary, and at the end of it, he said, I think you're on the right path, but you need to figure out how to do this work for your community to help better your community too. And that really, really resonated with me, Teresa. And I almost feel like it was a challenge from Gary. He saw the passion that I had and got to know me for a very short amount of time and said, basically go out and do as we are doing. And so I did. I took that up and I found an organization. At that time, it was the National Association of Gay and Lesbian Real Estate Professionals, NAHREP, and I got very involved with that group. I ended up running that group's Minnesota chapter for several years, and then I actually founded and was the executive director of their philanthropic arm, the foundation, the NAHREP Foundation, and I did that for about a year and a half. Now, as I tell people, you can read the Inman version. They did a very good job at covering all the juicy Bravo TV details on what happened to migrate from one organization to the other. You lived it with me in real time. That organization ceased to exist and eventually was disbanded. It exists today in a for-profit form as an online resource for LGBTQ and queer professionals in the industry. And as I have said dozens of times, the more exposure folks get, the better it is for all of us. So we acknowledge that they're still there, but we are fundamentally two different organizations, NAHREP and the Alliance. So the Alliance was formed, Teresa, out of a kind of a phoenix from the ashes, if you will. After NAHREP fell apart, there were, almost 60 of us that got together and just started talking. And I don't want to jump the punch here. If you have more questions on that process, I can talk a little bit about that if you want. But it was an accident that I fell into nonprofit leadership. I actually started a consulting company, which I had hoped to eventually leave the banking industry and focus on being a practitioner of DEI work for banks and for real estate firms on a freelance basis. And I ended up, my very first major project was creating the Alliance. And I was very blessed, and I use that word very intentionally, to have been invited back by the board of directors for an interim CEO role, and then was extended a contract later on, creating a permanent role. And really, I don't want to even call it a career, but a life change for me. So that's, in a very high level, that's how I stumbled my way into nonprofit leadership.
Well, I did not know this story, that it was 53 million and one, which was Jerry Asensio's, huge one-man show that NAHREP put together with the vision of Gary. And Gary has a way of making a difference and impacting our lives, which is what he did for me as well. So I love that you shared that, something that we have in common. And also the work that you do, I can see easily why you were chosen, because obviously you have the passion, you also have the leadership skills, you have that background in the industry. And it was almost like when God winks, right? There's, it's winking at you saying, this is what you need to be doing. And I'm so, so excited and happy that you're the right person for that opportunity. And of course, I know there are a lot of challenges in our business, and especially right now in the LGBTQ plus community, which I know education and love and kindness really solves everything. I think that if we can just remember that, that's really what it's all about, because you said it at the very beginning. So tell me, what are those challenges? What are specific things that I know that you're encountering and the community is encountering on a regular basis?
Yeah. So I don't think there's one person that's a part of the queer community that isn't excited for this year to end. just, just so we could get it behind us and see what 2024 has to bring. And I know when we talk about that now, it's kind of tongue in cheek. Like, is it going to be 2020 part 4, or are we actually going to get a 2024? I feel like every year for the last 4.5 years, we've done nothing but make historic headlines every day. And I don't know about you, Teresa, but I'm getting kind of tired of it. I'd like to just go back to boring just for a little bit. So our community, and in so many ways, it's history repeating itself, but in so many ways, we find ourselves at kind of a unique intersection of what we're facing right now. This is the first time, at least in modern history, that the LGBTQ plus community has broad and very wide acceptance ratings. Independent news sources have confirmed this. 7 out of 10 people agree that LGBTQ marriage is the right thing to do. It's right to honor those rights for everyone. And historically, this is the most acceptance our community has felt in the masses. Now, you have that on the right hand, and then on the left hand, you look at what's happening in the socio-political climate around this country. And for whatever reason, there always has to be a victimized group, a marginalized group, some group that is doing worse off or is being targeted as opposed to others. And right now it's our community, unfortunately. And just this year alone, Teresa, there have been over 700 pieces of legislation between the local, state, and federal levels that have been proposed to somehow limit or restrict, or in some cases, completely repeal rights from the LGBTQ population. Now, throughout this interview, I'm probably going to just use the word queer as a blanket term. And I do want to touch on that for everyone who's watching with us, because that's a polarizing word. And it's a word that has a very vicious history to it, especially for the folks that were part of the original gay rights movement. But I will tell you, because of the younger millennial generation, Gen Z, and now we have Gen Alpha coming after Gen Z, that word has been reclaimed by the community, and they have taken that back. What used to be an incredibly derogatory, offensive term that was hurled, weaponized, and hurled at folks who were going through the AIDS crisis, who were going through the civil rights movement, we have reclaimed as a community. And we use the word queer now as an umbrella term that's inclusive of every one of those letters in the acronym, to make sure that when we talk about the community, we're not accidentally dropping off a letter and making anyone within our house feel marginalized. You look at Canada versus the United States, and oftentimes in the States, we just say LGBTQ plus. Well, they actually add QIA onto it, because there are different cultural understandings and strengths in different areas of the world where different letters represent more predominant. Really, we look at the two-spirited. So the two, if you ever see a two in the acronym, two is for two-spirited, and that is an indigenous term. That isn't something that you can claim. You have to be part of an indigenous community that really believes and adheres to the two-spirited existence. So I use queer because it's a blanket term that we have reclaimed, that we are now proud of. We are stronger with an umbrella term that's all-inclusive. But I did want to just address that, because I'll probably use it as we go forward throughout this as well.
Well, one of the questions, okay, you used it. So would that be something that I could use? I just want a clarification, because I know I consider myself an ally. And I know sometimes people say, hey, it's better for someone else to call you an ally than you to say you're an ally, right? But I want to clarify that just quickly. Is it something that individuals who are not part of that community to state it, or would that be offensive?
So I thank you for asking. That's a great question. And I also want to talk about ally as well in just a second. My opinion, and listen, not everyone's going to agree with me. There are folks, part of the boomer generation, that are still very, very sensitive, triggered by hearing that word, frankly. So there is no setting where we're going to have universal agreement on the acceptance of that word. However, as you and I both know, there are other cultural words, let's say, that have been used very disparagingly and very aggressively as a violent word, and that is not okay for other folks to use in those terms. Queer is more of a definition now in modern day America. When we talk about the modern vernacular, the word queer isn't as much of a noun as it is a term to describe an entire community. So I would tell you, Teresa, if we were having a dialogue, or as a DEI professional, if you were referencing the community, I'd say, yeah, you can say the queer community. Are you going to offend some people? Probably. Am I going to offend some people? Probably. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're a straight ally or not. It's just still a controversial term that the community is working on reclaiming, and it's going to take some time before we all get there. Now, you use the word ally, and I would go as far as saying you're not an ally, Teresa. You're an advocate. You're one step up from an ally. An ally is allies often recognize themselves as allies, but that term isn't for someone to give themselves. It's for a member of the community to give to one of our straight colleagues when we recognize that they truly are walking the walk and talking the talk, that they are there on our backs. They have us. They're side by side fighting for us. They accept us, they honor us, and they bring us to the table. Now, the difference is when you do that every single day, and when you're always looking to do more and become more inclusive and bring more people in instead of pushing them out, that's when you change from an ally to an advocate. And the work that you do, Teresa, especially, I've never felt as warm and safe around anyone than I have our family and friends in the industry who do the work that you do, yourself probably toward the top of that list, honestly. So I would challenge you and say, as a member of the community, I'm calling you an advocate, not just an ally.
Oh, thank you so much. It really is so special, and I really appreciate it, Ryan, so very much. And I totally understand your reference to the queer community. And as I know that when we talk about Latinos, Latinx is one of those words that people are like, don't call me that, depending on what generation that you are part of. So I know that y'all have done some phenomenal work at the Alliance, and I'm so proud of all the great resources that you offer. And I want people to know about these resources because there's so many, from, the data that you provide, so before I spill all the beans, tell me a little bit about what those resources are so that people out there are really able to use them and become familiar with them as well.
At the end of Q3, just because we had so much going on, there was so much going on in the industry and then in the community and then just globally, I actually sat down on a Post-it note and I started writing out all the various projects that we had currently ongoing in Q3. And I stopped the list at 32, 32 simultaneous, amazing, comprehensive projects. But we really break things into 4 pillars. And you've heard our friends at NAHREP talk about their pillars. It's very comparable. Our 4 pillars are education, advocacy, philanthropy, and what we call business development or membership focus. So within each one of those, we have a series of not just collateral for our members, but also thought leadership opportunities, I guess entertainment to a degree, and then certainly the education programs that we put on, which you and I share a common philosophy. It is through education that we open hearts and minds. Those 4 pillars keep us incredibly busy. Now, at the end of the day, we are a 501c6 organization, just like your Chamber of Commerce is. And our job is to make sure that we're giving value add to our members. Now, 28% of our members, Teresa, identify as straight allies, which I think is especially cool. Almost 50% of our membership are female identifying, which is really cool if you think about where we came from. One of the things that we prided ourselves on when we got an opportunity to start the Alliance and build something from the ground up is that we want to truly be an organization that reflects society, reflects our community. And with all the amazing intersectionality in the queer community, it was so important that we weren't just assembling another organization of 50 plus white cisgender men. And we took that to heart, and our entire board took that to heart. And now, almost 4 years later, we can look back and say, we're doing the right things. We've got a membership base that is truly diversifying by the day. And we're helping folks understand that it's not just an orientation and identity thing. It's so much more about who you are, because everyone in the queer community has some kind of intersectionality that touches on another protected or not protected minority or majority class. So no one of us can be singly defined by our membership in the LGBTQ plus community. It intersects with something else. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry, I think it's important to keep in mind that we all bring something different to the table. And even though I am a white guy at the head of this organization that is incredibly diverse, it's so important to me that we're giving other folks a chance to talk at the microphone too, right? That we're using that you and I have, Teresa, because, and I'll go as far as saying you have white passing privilege, right? I have straight passing privilege.
Yes.
And using that privilege as a tool for good instead of being afraid of being accused of having privilege, that's what makes us leaders. We use that tool to spotlight and amplify the voices that aren't being heard. So I get super passionate about talking about the membership. We've done amazing things. Our programs reflect the membership, and our programs reflect where we're trying to go in the future. And everything, my job as the company executive is to really try and predict what's coming down the pipe, plan accordingly, and make sure that we maintain relevance as we go into the future, and that we keep evolving with our community, which is sometimes exhaustingly changing on a daily basis, right? So I think I am most proud of our education program, specifically our Alliance Certified Ally program, which one of your very own actually created, Alex Cruz, who is now our director of education for the Alliance. Started off as he was our first national vice president. And when we were just kind of figuring out how these officer positions would interact with staff, with the rest of the volunteer structure, Alex was, I would say, critical in helping us establish some boundaries for the officers. And one of the things that he wanted to take on was membership and education. And little announced to us at the time, Alex had authored a CE program in the state of Ohio, which he had been teaching as a Berkshire Hathaway agent for several years. And he brought it to me one day and he said, so I've got this thing that I do in Ohio. It gives folks some understanding on how to work with the community. Do you think maybe there's a chance we could do this nationally? And I said, whoa, you've got this thing. What do you mean? So I said, would you show it to me? Can I sit through it and watch you train it? And Teresa, I was just absolutely awestruck at the end of it. Alex had created an inclusive program that gave folks who weren't familiar with the queer community the building blocks to not only work with us, but also be better friends, be better family members, be better supporters. And if they aren't going to be those things, at least understand what some of the terminology that maybe you have kids who are Generation Z who are coming home from school using words that you've never heard before. Alex figured out how to explain all of that in layman's terms that everyone could get. So we took that course, and over the period of, I don't know, 6 months, we refined it and we brought an instructional design consultant in and packaged it. And now we have certified over 3,000 allies in this industry. It's a 90-minute course. It's available to the public online. And we do, as you know, we do custom versions of this at various events and for various partners and associations. We actually did it at your conference 2 years ago, I believe.
And last year as well.
And last year.
You did it in a recording session for
we
all
did.
of Home Services of America. Which
exactly.
I absolutely
so now we have trained, the behemoth organizations, right? Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and HSA. We were just fortunate, actually, in July to train all of the professional staff of NAR in Chicago and DC. We went down to Keller and trained their executive office, and have done it for the California Association of Realtors and so many other organizations across the country. It really is an amazing. We didn't know the opportunity that it had when Alex and I started talking about it, and now it's a game changer. It's so gratifying, and Alex is so modest when he talks about it, Teresa, but when we get an email from a member or from an association professional or professional staff at your organization, and they have our little certified ally symbol at the bottom of their email, that feeling, I can't articulate it the right way, but it gives such a feeling of support, knowing that someone invested their time in wanting to get to know who we are and who our community is composed of, and really the vernacular and terms. And it is such a sign of solidarity when we see that little emblem.
Well, and it sparked so much conversations with people when he's doing it in person, because people want to share their stories. And also, individuals who really don't understand and want to get clarification. You can see people crying, when we're leaving, because they've had children that have come out to them, or they are dealing with, their own situation and scenarios within their work and don't want to be able to express themselves. And I think it's just really a phenomenal course. I recommend it to everyone to take it. It's not very long, and it's a phenomenal certification. But you also do, I got to talk about the great work that you do on the data that really provides clear understanding of why it's important to support the community, not just because it's business sense, it's business smart. And so talk about that report, because I know it's a cooperation with Freddie Mac, and it's a great detailed report that people can find it. And one last one before you start on that one, I also love the buyer representation booklet that you can also find online to help buyers that have never purchased a home through the process and understanding what the requirements are. I think that's also a great resource as well.
Yeah, and just working backwards, I would say now, in the wake of this Missouri verdict, that first time home buyer guide is probably more important than ever, because we don't know which direction we're going to go. We don't know who's going to be going to be able to afford buyer representation. And we have resources like that in place. Now, we certainly didn't know that was going to be the outcome when we created it. But Berkshire Hathaway Home Services was one of the original folks at the table with us. And I got to tell you, Teresa, that was the very first thing we did as an organization, is put together that first time home buyer guide. It's 42 pages, fully illustrated, layman's terms from start to finish. If you think you're in your apartment some Sunday drinking coffee and you think, geez, I'd love to have a yard to walk around in. From that second forward, this guide walks you through every aspect of not even the purchase process. I would say really the path to home ownership.
Yes, it does.
And Berkshire Hathaway was one of the 4 sponsors that came in to make that possible. And Teresa, we have circulated over 10,000 copies of that now.
Unbelievable.
Through downloads, through our chapter program, actually making print versions of that accessible at Pride festivals throughout the country, and offices. We have so many different offices in your affiliate network and throughout our partner network who actually print stacks of these and leave them for consumers in their office to take with. So we're incredibly proud of it. Like I said, it really is an all-inclusive tourist map, if you will, to what to expect and how to go from rental to appreciating and enjoying the home that you just bought. Something we're very proud of. Our research, I don't even know where to start. David Soroti, who we are blessed enough to work with, he runs our communications and PR, and he has such a strategic mind, and he has such a passion for research. He was actually with the Coldwell Banker brand doing their stuff at the corporate level for a very, very long time, and brought his skill set to a couple different organizations, and he works with us as well, but he pours his heart into our data projects. And we are now working on our 4th report, which we hope to publish late spring. I'm not going to tell you what it's about yet, but the first 3 all have some kind of focus on discrimination and the impact of discrimination against our community in the homeownership journey. So one of the reports 2 years ago, we actually mathematically and scientifically, we can show statistical significance supporting how discrimination from the early years in primary and middle school leads to lower home ownership rates in your 30s. And people think about that when I say it, and they're like, you're skewing the facts, you're obviously manipulating figures. Let me make it really simple for everyone listening. It's a domino effect. When you're bullied in primary and elementary or even middle school, high school, you're not able to focus on why you're going to school, which is to obtain an education, to learn and to grow as a human before you get turned out into this world on your own. If you're being harassed in 8th grade, your focus is not going to be your homework or comprehending what you're reading in science. It's going to be to save your skin every day that you walk through those doors. And guess what? That's going to have an impact on your placement scores when you're done with your high school career trying to get into college. So it's a lower rate of college admission for folks who are bullied, which then, unfortunately, as you can see where this is going, if you have a lower rate of college admission, your opportunity after college is I would say greatly decreased. You can definitely go into one of the trades, which we support and we need more of, frankly, but your access to a 4-year graduate program, whether that's one of the techs, one of the VOTECs, a trade, or whether that's college or university, it's greatly impacted based on what happened to you 6-7 years ago. Certainly, if you don't go into one of those career lines, your income could be limited. Not always. There's a lot of opportunities, like being a realtor, that give you substantial income opportunity. However, on a scale with just looking at statistics, folks are statistically more likely to make less than their counterparts who are college educated, right?
Absolutely.
Making less impacts your ability to qualify for a mortgage, which impacts your ability to buy a home, which impacts your overall home ownership opportunity. And it all started back in 6th grade, and you didn't even know it. So there's a chain of events there that gets set off and put in play just by simple discrimination and bullying.
Yeah. And that's all across the board, Ryan, because the one thing that when we're talking about the different communities, it affects. That's why I love the work that you're doing, that we're going to talk about in a minute with the Stop Hating Real Estate campaign, because it's all of us that are affected. It's not just, one group, right? And so that's really important to talk about as well. And I know that since you started and I started and this past couple of years, you've talked about this already, the landscape in real estate has changed, right? And especially when it comes to inclusivity and support for your community, right? So tell me, how has that affected the work that you're doing in the future? And obviously this project is one that I'm going to really look forward to seeing, because I think that's going to be a eye-opening, very eye-opening event for so many people. But what other things are you looking to do in the future so that we can really help representation and also better support the community?
So let me talk a little bit about this this campaign, this initiative. The Stop Hating Real Estate campaign is what it's called. And folks can check it out at stophatingrealestate.org. And that's a fairly inclusive site. I should say Berkshire Hathaway was one of the first organizations to come on and signed it at a company level, which is huge.
Gino, actually, at Home Services America, headed. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Did a video. I loved it. Yes. Go ahead. I'm
absolutely,
sorry.
Absolutely. How did it happen? Well, the Alliance has been incredibly fortunate to be warmly welcomed into the scene. And part of that reception has been from our sister organizations. Our sister organizations, some of you know us now as the Four Families, which that's a whole other thing. That was a term I just used tongue in cheek about 4 years ago. And then before I knew what was going on, everyone started using it. I think I heard it at an NAR event and I thought, what?
That's my thing. Wait a minute.
On what? AREAA, the Asian Association, NAHREP, the Hispanic Latino Association, NAHREP, the Historically Black Association, and the Alliance. Together, they call us the Four Families, for better or for worse. But what I think is cool, Teresa, is that recently, and now about 2 years in the making, this is the first time that we have all stood together and all started to push the boulder up the hill together. We have all been running the same race for a very, very long time, and we've been trying to do it individually in our own lanes, and we haven't been getting as far as we should have gotten. The four of us got onto a phone call, oh gosh, I don't know, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Gary Acosta, Hope 12, Renee Wilson, and myself, and we literally said, we got to support each other. And at the time, I thought, okay, these folks were good enough to all jump on this call. I remember going back and forth talking to Gary Acosta about it a little bit, and he said, so who's going to organize this? I said, Gary, you're the powerhouse in the room, man. If you put this on the calendars, the people will show up. So Gary actually was good enough to organize the call, and we all jumped on and we all talked about it, and we all realized that we were facing issues that were unique to our minority groups, but also commonly held across the spectrum. And that if we started working together on tackling some of these issues, we'd make a heck of a lot more progress than trying to do it on our own scale of resources. So that was really the beginning. Now, did I know that so we call it Shire, Stop Hating Real Estate. Did I know that Shire would spawn from that? No. But what we did do is we got collaborative MOUs based in thought leadership signed with all of the other organizations, and they have as well. Shire itself was a culmination of a lot of frustration. from a lot of different people. And I remember this past summer sitting and watching the news when the land bans were being discussed. They hadn't even been signed into law in Florida and other states yet. But our Asian brothers and sisters were facing open discrimination in several different states. I think 23 states now are weighing this land ban, which is mind-blowing to me that we're in 2023 and we're talking about prohibiting people's rights to buy and own homes. Now, I understand that there's a portion of national security that comes into that, and there are concerns about foreign investors. But fundamentally, this is impacting more people on the retail mortgage and retail home sale side than it is anyone else, which is a tragedy. So we talked about that. We talked about all the legislation aimed at stripping the rights of folks from the LGBTQ plus community. We talked about how the intersectionality, how Black queer folks, Asian queer folks, Latino queer folks were not even disproportionate, but just flat out the lowest home ownership rates in the entire world. I think the Black queer community has a home ownership rate of 6%, which is unheard of. Talked about that. We had conversations about the fact that this appraisal catastrophe sweeping the country right now is disproportionately impacting our Black and brown friends. And it's not just in the Northeast, it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
We talked about the fact that since the Civil Rights Act was passed, since the protections went into the home buying and the real estate industries, the home ownership percentage for the Black African-American community has actually decreased. Mm-hmm. We talked about all these things. We talked about the crisis at the borders. We talked about and I'm just going to say it, the internment camps that were set up on the southern border and illegally detaining folks that were crossing in looking for refugee status or asylum. And we realized we all had skin in the game. For the first time in a long time, we were all being impacted at the same time. And my president at the time, Aaron Morrison, who is a native of Austin, Texas, and unfortunately sees a lot of this up front and personally in the state of Texas, she called on me several times and she said, Ryan, we got to do something. We can't just sit here and watch this. We got to do something. And then about 2 weeks later, the Human Rights Campaign, HRC, declared a national state of emergency for the LGBTQ community in this country, identified that we were universally under assault. And Aaron called me again and said, Ryan, we got to do something. We can't just sit on our hands. And I said, Aaron, we got to figure out how to do something in our lane where we can make a difference. Yes. David Cerroti, who is a friend and mentor, he has a saying, you can't save all the whales, Ryan. Pick a whale, save it, and move on to the next whale. And I didn't get that until I started this role. You can't take on every problem at the same time. But if you can identify one problem and put your resources into solving it, then you can solve it, take it off your list, and move on to the next one. Shire is a culmination of pooling the resources of the partner organizations that are involved to say once and for all, we have a zero tolerance policy on discrimination and hate in the real estate and housing industry. Now, this is not a fair housing discussion, Teresa. I want to be very clear about that. This is a zero tolerance for taking jabs at someone for how they look, for maybe a lesbian couple's walking out of your open house and your mortgage lender who's sitting in on that open house turns to you and says something demeaning about that couple because of who they are. Right. Not anymore. We have no time for it. And we're telling our members and the members of the other organizations who have signed on that it's okay to speak out about hate. It's okay to tell everyone else that we are done as housing professionals cultivating a toxic environment, that we are done and we will not take it anymore. And as you said, AREAA, NAHREP, and WomanUp, which is a subsidiary of the California Association of Realtors, have all signed on. Now, I do want to say, the biggest question we get is, why didn't you bring NAHREP to the table? And I want to clear that up once and for all for everyone with us today. NAHREP is actively trying to go through their governance system internally to get permission to sign on to this initiative. They have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and we have to respect that their governance system is what works for them. And on their time, they hopefully will join the coalition. They have been invited, and I know that their president and executive director are very passionate about what we are doing and want to join the initiative. They just need to make sure that they're doing it the right way as an organization internally. So we respect that. And we have told them many times that when they are ready, the door is open, and we'd love to have them on board because we are stronger together. And
That's so
not
true.
to be too cliche, I am a pupil of the late Senator Paul Wellstone, Minnesotan here. We all do better when we all do better. So Teresa, this isn't just a flash in a pan. We've got different initiative stops, so to speak, different campaign stops that we're making with this from now all the way through next November's elections.
Oh, and I love it. And I also think that it's important. And again, thanks for clarifying that with NAHREP. We know NAHREP as an organization. They have procedures that they have to take in order to adopt any kind of signature. So we all get it. But thank you for those who are not aware of why it's taking a little bit longer than normal for that organization to be able to do what they need to do. And I believe that they are also all in, because I've talked to many of their representatives and they definitely agree with it. One of the things that I love about the Stop Hate in Real Estate campaign is that you have a pledge. And in case you don't know it, Alan Dalton, who is a huge executive vice president with our organization, he's actually retiring at the end of this month. He'll still be a consultant. Pledges, he was one of the biggest proponent of pledges. And even in our industry, in our own organization, we have the Forever Agent Pledge, which provides our agents a pledge that they're going to commit to in providing service, right? And I think that also pledge that and he always talk about every person that really has an intent to make a difference and really gives their heart to it. Doctors, nurses, police officers, even the president pledges, right? And so I think that's such a huge step forward because we're all pledging together. And so tell me about that, and how can we learn more, number one, about the Alliance, and how can people sign on to the pledge, which is again, that's a different step, but where can people sign the pledge as well? If you let people know that website.
Yeah, absolutely. So I referenced the website earlier, stophateinrealestate.org. That actually brings you right to the pledge landing page. And it spells out in very simple terms what the pledge is all about.
Very simple, easy.
Yep. And I tell you what, it also substantiates why now is the time to act on this. That site hosts facts on how disproportionately our minority communities are being treated today in 2023, almost 2024. I mean, 24 years past the turn of the millennium, right? And we're still dealing with the same issues we had in the 60s in large part. Yes. So I encourage folks to go to that site, www.stophateinrealestate, all one word, .org or .com. We have them both. Wherever you go, you're going to find it. And just check it out. And hopefully it registers with you. Hopefully there's something there that inspires you to hear the call, because we are calling for you. I promise that. And if you can't find inspiration there, I would encourage you to contact me personally, and I'd love to have a conversation with you as to why this is the time, why you're the right people to be signing this pledge, and why this is going to change the way that we do things fundamentally if enough people take it seriously. So the pledge is important, Teresa, because just like you said, we are arbitrators of human interaction, just like doctors, just like lawyers. Now, are we performing brain surgery? No, we're not. But I will argue with anyone any day that we are saving lives. Homeownership is the American dream.
It is.
And it is the first building block to education and health, to knowledge, to financial security, to generational stability, and familial ties. Without residency, without shelter, without home ownership, you're scrambling to get everything else. A job, right? Where do you keep your clothes for a job that you want if you don't have a place to hang them? Literally, it's something that simple. So we're not doing brain surgery, but I definitely agree that what we do as ambassadors to our communities, it's right up there. It perpetuates and really enables folks to chase that American dream. So never let anyone tell you that what you're doing in this industry doesn't matter, because it does. It really does. And I'm so passionate about that. And that's why this pledge matters, because we have to create a standard that we're universally holding everyone to. 1.5 million realtors, right? Well, what we don't talk about is that there are that many or more real estate agents in addition to realtors. There are about 2.5
Yes.
million people who sell real estate, residential real estate. That's not even taking commercial or the Builders Association into account, plus all the ancillary services, title and mortgage, appraisal, inspection, everything. This is a huge industry we're in, folks. And if we can set just basic standards, and in my upbringing, it was the golden rule: do unto others, right? It's that simple. It really is. And I hate to minimize the severity, but the solution is that simple. Do unto others as you would want done, maybe not even unto you, but your kids.
That's
Think
right.
about it that way. Do unto others as you would want your children treated.
Exactly.
Because we all are someone's children.
That's
that is
right.
The one thing we all have in common. So this pledge is really universal. I think it is irrelevant who you are and what you believe. I think it is more relevant that you are willing to accept that we're all humans. And that's what this pledge comes down to. So it's incredibly important. And we've seen thousands of people already sign this. We've got some amazing press opportunities coming up with our sister organizations that are signed on. AREAA and NAHREP and WomanUp will all be hosting press conferences like we did to kick this off. Those dates will be announced in the future. But this is hopefully going to be a catalyst for unification in a time where it's so easy to find a reason to become polarized in this country and in our industry. Something as basic as treating others with respect and dignity hopefully will pull us all back together.
I couldn't agree with you more. And love, right? And kindness.
And love.
Those are really it. It's just truly the opportunity that we all have to really understand how important it is to work together. And also in that fact that you talked about the biggest purchase, I think you're 100%. It is the biggest investment that someone typically will make in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And so we want to help them because it is part of those 4 necessary needs. Shelter is one of them, right?
Yep.
So I think that your message is so clear, and I love the pledge, and I was one of the first to sign it. I think it was really very instrumental for me, and also for those who are not aware of it. They should go on and sign it and read it and take it to heart.
Teresa, let me go on record because this is important. You all were incredibly generous in my bio, and I appreciate that. But I do want to set the record straight. Nothing we do at the Alliance is a one-person show. And without Mary Mancera and David Cerroti and Aaron Morrison, this pledge would not be a reality. This initiative would not be a reality because I was very hesitant. To get this off the ground because my fear was there are bigger obstacles coming down the pipe, and we need to save our resources and our energy to take those on. Well, I was proven wrong. And David and Mary and Aaron, because the way we work as an organization, I believe that I am only as good as the information that's being presented to me, and I can only make decisions based on that information. And David, Mary, and Aaron all brought different sets of information to me, and I changed my mind because of their information and their perspectives and points. So it's really those three. It's a brain trust, and without those three, this wouldn't have resulted in really the enormous application that it has turned into. So I think those three as well, very much.
And
so.
I'm not surprised. And I definitely want to give shout outs because I know their determination and the passion that they all have. So again, thank you for making sure that we provide credit where credit is due. And that's what makes you such a great leader, Ryan.
Oh, thank you.
So we've got one last question and then a fun one that I like to answer. So how can we, and you talked about advocacy being important of your different pillars, and how can policymakers and legislators contribute, and how can we help in the process so that we can have a more inclusive environment when it comes to housing for the LGBTQ plus community, and what necessary changes do we believe that are necessary to do that?
Yeah. I think the biggest fundamental difference between our organization and the other three diverse segment organizations that are recognized by really the masses and NAR, you ask my peers at any of the three other organizations, and they'll tell you that their primary purpose is to increase the homeownership rate for their respective community. And yes, that is certainly one of our goals. But we're so far behind that goal. We're 50 years behind the Equal Rights Act. We don't have universal protection in this country today as LGBTQ people for orientation or identity. They're not protected classes federally. So it comes down to the state. And in 30 states, it's more than half the country. In 30 states today, the LGBTQ plus community has no protections in real estate, in finance, in the seeking of shelter, in the renting of an apartment. It's absolutely absurd. And I've been called a liar. I said this, well, unfortunately, when I said it, it was 28 states. We've lost 2. I said this on stage in front of almost 5,000 people at an NAR event, and one person stood up and yelled liar. And I brought out the data, and unfortunately, it's the truth. But we take it all for granted, right?
Right.
Especially if we live in more liberal states. We just assume that that's the law of the land everywhere, and everyone gets the same protections. Well, that's not the truth. And in more than half this country, we don't have basic protections. Now, on a federal level, the solution for that is the Equality Act. And this is a piece of legislation that has been proposed every year since 1973, and it has never gotten a vote on the House, or I beg your pardon, on the Senate floor. We saw it come darn close 2 years ago when it made it to the Senate, but did not get out of committee for a vote. The president said he would have signed it at that point in time. And now, obviously, that the balance of power has shifted, we don't anticipate seeing it come back on the congressional docket for quite some time. It's alive in committee, but I don't think that it could be a reality for probably 4 or 5 years still now. However, that piece of legislation would basically carte blanche extend freedoms of protected class status onto orientation and identity. Now, there are some people rolling their eyes right now saying, well, that's not entirely true. You do have protections. And let me clarify that by saying, yes, kind of. The very first thing the president did after his inauguration was sign an executive order which granted equal rights protection under the class of sex for orientation and identity. However, as we all know, the next administration can easily undo that executive order, just like this administration did with the last. Executive orders are discretionary based on whoever's sitting in the chair behind the resolute desk. So we don't have anything in law that would enshrine rights for LGBTQ folks. Now, where our lane is concerned, NAR is looking at how to modify and just take on the housing aspect of that rather than solving for everything. And I'm flying into DC in 2 weeks, actually, to have meetings with NAR and HRC and on the Hill about how we can keep this legislation moving forward. It does have bipartisan support, and I think now is the time to get it through. Because homeownership, like we said, is the American dream. And Teresa, you're right. What you said about 20 minutes ago, this is not just an ethical or a moral or do the right thing. This is a business imperative.
It is.
The LGBTQ community in this country has 1.2 trillion with a T, trillion dollars in economic potential to pour into this economy. That's larger than the combined economies of Canada, Australia, and South Korea. Think about that for a second. Just the American queer population. So if you're not working with the LGBTQ plus population intentionally, you got to rethink your business strategy because you're losing out on money and opportunity. But yeah, I mean, let's just say it. It's also the right thing to do, right?
It is.
So there's nothing but opportunity, and we truly believe that the more folks that see that, the better it's going to be for everyone.
Oh, well, first of all, this has been so enlightening, Ryan, such great information. I always like to end with a fun question. And one of the things that I found, and we got a minute, that we both love, and I think I did not know the passion that you shared for Halloween as I do. I call myself a Halloweener. So what brought you to this experience? Why do you love this holiday?
Okay, so with respect to time, I played 3 sports. I wasn't good at any of them. I hunted and fished, didn't like it very much. My dad is a guy's guy. My brother's a guy's guy. This is the one thing I could do with my dad that we were both super passionate about. And we started, gosh, in middle school, and it just turned into an obsession. I mean, we'd have 24 of my friends come over on Halloween, and we would do live action stations and have people tour the trick-or-treaters around our yard. We were on an 1.5 acres growing up, and that's how it started. And 2 storage units later, It's an obsession. And
This
you
is
can
my
relate because I've seen
obsession.
your house. Yeah. And now it's like it gives me September 1st hits, and I'm like, okay, putting stuff on papers and diagrams and what can I
Oh.
buy this year? The joke in my house, my husband allows me to purchase one major Halloween thing every year, but there's a cash limit on it because he knows without that, I would just be out of control. So every year I get something new to add to the yard. But yeah, it has really strong nostalgia and familial ties for me. And it's something that now I share with Michael, my husband, and my nephews and niece come over and they take part in it. I don't
It's
know.
so much
It's
fun.
so easy and so much fun. And you're creating and building together and it gets your mind going. And yeah, it's a lot. I would say it's a lot like the same satisfaction people get out of playing video games,
Oh,
right?
yes. Or
Yeah,
pick it mall, whatever the pick mall, whatever.
exactly.
It is so much fun. And I'm like, you have to set myself a limit too, because otherwise we go crazy.
Oh, just
Well,
wild. Yeah.
well, I really appreciate this. Thank you for sharing. And, again, this is actually a wrap up of our another wonderful episode of Diversity Matters. And I want to thank you, Ryan, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. You do such great work at the Alliance and for making such a huge difference in our industry. You really have impacted, and the collaboration of all these organizations really does make such a phenomenal difference in our world. So thank you again. And thank you all for joining us today on Diversity Matters. To stay updated, we've got great content, future episodes, and you can access all of the past archive of Diversity Matters show by going by diversitymattersseries.com right here, or you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is diversitymattersyoutube.com. That's so easy, right? And as the holiday season approaches, we want to extend warm wishes to each and every one of you. In December, we're going to take a brief hiatus for the holidays, but please mark your calendars because on January 24th, we'll be back here right at this station, welcoming the new year with a new lineup of another group of inspiring leaders. And until our return, be kind, enjoy your loved ones. Just don't take them for granted. And more importantly, continue to embrace the beauty of diversity. Thank you for tuning in, and we can't wait to reconnect with you in the new year. See you all in 2024. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Ryan.
Bye now.